In the name of the Emperor, let this chronicle be sealed. Let its words be carried by the astropathic winds, and let its truths be carved into data slate and memory alike. For there has come a being not born of our stars, nor shaped by the Imperium's long and tyrannical reach. A being who is light incarnate, yet shadow-haunted by a hunger deeper than chaos itself. He falls through the void between realities, a fracture of gold and darkness, a soul that wars with itself. One name is spoken in whispers by terrified psychers, Sentry, the Golden Guardian. And yet behind him, coiled like a great serpent woven from the anxieties of gods and the nightmares of men, another name stirs, the Void. Neither daemon, nor psyker, nor Xenos, nor machine can claim ownership or understanding of this arrival. The warp recoils. Daemons hiss in unspoken fear. The Emperor's tarot fractures into impossible patterns. The choir falls silent, for something has entered our realm that even the Imperium itself cannot predict. Thus begins the tale of a radiant titan of impossible mercy, dragged screaming into a galaxy where mercy is a myth. Thus begins the chronicle of the Sentry in the 41st millennium, the being who may yet save us, doom us, or become a wild card so catastrophic that even the ruinous powers hesitate to claim him. The tear in reality opened without warning, not with the shriek of a warp rift, nor with the psychic thunder of demonic intrusion, but with the soundless flash of a dying star, folding inward, then erupting outward in pure, blinding gold. It appeared above a battlefield already drowned in misery. A shattered district on a war-torn imperial world, its crumbled hab-blocks glowing with the embers of orbital bombardment. Bodies lay in the streets, half buried in rubble. Smoke and ash choked the sky. Screams had long since faded. A black ship extraction gone wrong. Sisters of Silence stalked the ruins moments earlier, hunting rogue psychers, purging contamination, herding the broken and damned toward containment. A squad of custodians stood watch, golden armor reflecting the fires of a dying city, their halberds gleaming like judgment itself. All was predictable in the brutal, merciless way of the Imperium, until he arrived. The light collapsed into a humanoid shape, falling, spiraling, crashing into the fractured street with a thunderous shock wave that sent dust rippling outward like a storm front. The custodians froze. The sisters turned their emotionless visors toward the crater. Inside it lay a man, barefoot, ragged, hair wild, tangled in dust and ash, clothes torn as if from centuries of torment, no armor, no weapons, no psychic signature they recognized. But something else was there, a pressure, a presence, not warp, not flesh, not soul, not daemon, something other. A sister of silence took one step closer and felt her null aura shudder for the first time in her life. She did not recoil. Sisters do not fear. But she felt something she never had before, light resisting nothingness. A presence so alien that even her pariah nature couldn't smother it. The man groaned. His fingers twitched. His breath trembled. His eyes flickered open, not glowing, not raging, but confused, frightened, and painfully human. Robert Reynolds whispered one fragile word, "Where am I?" The custodians readied their weapons. A silent sister stepped forward, blade drawn, and somewhere, deep inside the broken psyche of the man now lying in their midst, a voice whispered, oily and amused, "Let me out." Robert squeezed his eyes shut. No, not here, not again. But the void stirred anyway, tasting this universe. A universe brimming with suffering, war, psychic storms, daemons, and a warp that mirrored its own hungers. It whispered once more, "I like this place." Robert felt the fear rise in him, the fear of losing control, the fear of what he might do, the fear of becoming a monster in a world already full of them. He curled inward, trembling. The custodians approached, the sisters closed in. The void laughed in the darkness of his mind. And thus the galaxy encountered a being it had no reference for, no classification, no prophecy, no defense prepared. A god of light with a god of darkness within. A man who could save worlds or unmake them, depending on whether he held his fear in check. The Imperium thought they had found a human. They were wrong. They had found the Sentry. The Custodians surrounded the crater with mechanical precision, golden silhouettes rising like obsidian statues lit by firelight. Their halberds hummed with caged annihilation, the air trembling under the pressure of their presence. To the Imperium, almost nothing was unknown. But this man, this trembling, barefoot, dust-covered stranger, registered as nothing they had ever encountered. No warp signature, no demonic trace, no psychic resonance, no Xenos marker, no genomic classification, just a man, a human, and yet the air around him bent subtly, as if reality itself leaned closer to observe him. A custodian, towering and unshakable, spoke through a vox-amplified tone like rolling thunder. "Identify yourself." Robert tried to lift his head. His body felt heavy. He wasn't injured, just overwhelmed. The void whispered inside him, a cold, slick pressure slithering beneath his ribs. "They fear us. Let me show them why." "No," Robert muttered under his breath. "Not again. Not here." A sister of silence stepped forward. Her mere presence suppressed the fear that wanted to seize him, suppressed the void's influence, suppressed everything. She was a living dead zone, a hole punched through the psychic fabric around him. When she came within 3 meters, Robert felt something he had not felt in years. Quiet. The void growled, muffled and distant. Robert finally exhaled. His voice cracked. "My name is Robert Reynolds. I don't know how I got here. I don't want any trouble." Custodians exchanged glances behind their emotionless helms. One spoke, voice implacable. "You fell from the sky in a burst of power. Your arrival disrupted nearby auger scans. You will come with us." Robert nodded. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to use his power. He didn't want to hurt anyone. The sister's null field soothed him like a sedative he desperately needed. But then, without warning, a distant psychic scream tore through the ruins. A surviving, unsanctioned psyker, one they hadn't yet purged, had awakened from the shock of the crash. His mind, already fractured, felt the presence of Sentry, and it broke completely. The psyker shrieked as warp energy exploded from his body, releasing a wave of raw psychic violence that would incinerate every mortal mind nearby. A daemon's claw pushed through reality at his shoulder. The custodians turned. The sisters braced. Robert's eyes widened in horror. The last time he hesitated during a crisis, the void had taken over. "Don't," Robert whispered inside his mind. "Please don't." But the void whispered back, delighted, "Let me help." The unsanctioned psyker's scream tore through the ruins like shattering glass, a psychic wail so violent that even the armored giants of the Custodes felt it ripple against their minds. The nearest Sisters of Silence stiffened as the air warped, cracking open into a jagged purple fissure that pulsed and writhed. A daemon claw pushed through the tier, dripping with unreality. The custodians lowered their halberds in a single unified motion. The sisters strode forward, their null auras pressing against the eruption of warp energy like a vice. But the psyker's mind was gone, burned out by the sudden, incomprehensible presence of Robert Reynolds. To him, Sentry's mind was a sun, a star, a force of nature, and the psyker broke under the weight of merely perceiving him. The warp rushed to fill the vacancy. "A breach! Contain it!" a custodian barked. Two leapt toward the psyker. Their movements were blinding, inhuman, perfect. They would have succeeded. But the daemon claw burst forward with explosive force, flinging them back several meters, gouging deep rents in the ceramite street. Robert stared, stunned. He had seen monsters. He had fought titans. He had battled gods. But this thing clawing out of reality itself, this felt wrong on every level of his being. The void purred in his skull. "This realm is hungry. Let me feed it. Let me out." "No," Robert whispered, hands shaking. "No, I can stop this. I have to stop this." The daemon screamed as more of its body forced through, a horned, chitinous abomination, its eyes burning with warp fire. A custodian charged, his guardian spear slicing downward with a golden arc. Too slow. The daemon was almost fully manifested. Robert felt the void ripple behind his thoughts, laughing with a hollow, bottomless amusement. You can't save them unless you use me. Robert gritted his teeth. He didn't want to use his full power. He didn't want to lose control. He didn't want to hurt these people who, despite their harshness, were still human, still innocent, still alive. The psyker shrieked again, and the daemon surged forward, tearing reality wide open. That was the moment Robert made his choice. He whispered one fragile phrase, "Just enough, just enough." Light flickered around his fingertips, a soft glow at first, then brighter, stronger. A radiant golden corona that made even the armored faces of the Custodes turn toward him in alarm. The Sisters of Silence felt their null auras strain, not fail, but bend against something that was not psychic, and yet exerted pressure like a star being born. The glow intensified. Robert rose slowly from the ground, not flying, not levitating, but simply becoming lighter than gravity allowed. The daemon hesitated. A deep, instinctive dread surged through it. A terror not of the sisters, not of the Custodes, but of this man who seemed made of sunlight and fear and impossible power. Robert extended one trembling hand. "Stop!" The golden light collapsed inward, then expanded in a perfect controlled pulse. It washed over the daemon, over the psyker, over the street, over the custodians and sisters. And for a brief instant, the warp itself recoiled. The daemon screamed without a mouth. Its form collapsed into nothingness as if unmade by a force that did not belong in 40K's cruel physics. The rift snapped shut with a violent thunderclap. Silence followed. Dust settled. Robert fell to his knees, gasping. He had used only a fraction of his power, just enough. Exactly enough. But even that was enough to terrify everyone present. The Custodes aimed their weapons. The sisters surrounded him, and deep within his mind the void whispered, "Excited, amused, hungry. You did well, Robert. But next time, you will need me." Robert closed his eyes and whispered back, "Never." The dust had barely settled when the custodians moved. Not out of fear, custodians do not fear, but out of protocol, the kind reserved for entities that defy all known categories within the Imperium. 3 armored giants advanced in a tightening formation. Halberds angled toward Reynolds, toward the man who had just erased a demon without drawing upon the warp. A custodian spoke, voice as cold and absolute as a verdict. "Subject demonstrates non-warp destructive capability. Subject is to be taken into custody for evaluation." Robert raised his hand slowly. "I don't want to fight you, please. I just want help. I just want to understand where I am." The Sisters of Silence, pariah witches of the Imperium, null-shrouded and emotionless, circled closer. Even without words, their intent was absolute. They would bring him in alive, unless he resisted. Robert swallowed hard. The void laughed behind his thoughts. "Look at them, Robert. They would cage you like an animal. Break them. Let me." "No," he whispered internally. "I said no." He forced the voices back down. Barely. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the sisters stepped fully into his null field. For a split second, Robert felt nothingness wash over him, a sensation like falling through cold water without drowning. The void's presence dulled instantly, as if smothered under a heavy blanket. Robert gasped with relief. He hadn't felt quiet like this in years. The sister, tall, masked, utterly silent, tilted her head as if observing prey she did not understand. Her aura washed over him with oppressive emptiness, and yet it helped. The custodians tightened their formation. "Move," Robert nodded. He stood, slowly. The sisters flanked him on all sides, creating a prison of null pressure that kept the void numb and distant. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Robert felt like he could breathe. They began marching him through the ruins toward an armored transport, toward interrogation, toward a fate unknown. But halfway there, the world changed. A psychic shockwave burst across the sky, rippling with warped lightning. Custodians halted mid-step. The sisters' masks turned upward in perfect unison. From the horizon came a sound like the screech of 1,000 broken angels. Warp fire split the clouds. Armored shapes descended from burning contrails, sleek, black, predatory silhouettes dropping from high altitude. The custodian commander muttered a single name, Adeptus Astartes. But not just any chapter. Their armor was midnight, trimmed with ivory, marked with symbols of purity and flame. The Black Templars, the most zealous of all loyalist space marines, a chapter known for hatred of witches, psychers, mutants, and anything they did not understand. Robert felt dread coil in his stomach. The void stirred, whispering eagerly, "Ah, warriors, fanatics, let me show them what a god looks like." Robert squeezed his eyes shut. "No, not them, not again, please." The first Black Templar struck the ground with the force of a meteor, then another and another, dozens, a crusade force. The custodians shifted into defensive posture, but even they knew what the arrival of the Templars meant. The leader, massive, draped in purity seals, carrying a chainsword the size of a mortal man, stepped forward. His vox grill roared, "Custodians, sisters, step aside, that creature is ours." Robert's heart pounded. The sisters tightened their null fields instinctively. The custodians braced, and the void whispered one final, delighted thought, "This is going to get interesting." The Black Templars formed a wall of ceramite and fury, their armor scorched from atmospheric entry, their purity seals burning in the ash-choked wind. Every helm turned toward Robert Reynolds like predator eyes locking onto prey. Not a psyker, not a daemon, not a mutant, something worse, something unknown. Their leader stepped forward, towering, draped in parchment and iron chains. His voice boomed through his vox grill like a war horn. "Custodians, in the name of the High Marshal, we claim this abomination for purification." The custodian commander angled his halberd slightly, a gesture small to most, but in Imperial terms, it bordered on a threat. "Stand down, Astartes. This one falls under our jurisdiction." The Templar's gauntlet tightened around his chainsword. "You coddle a witch spawn." The custodian did not move. "We contain it." The Black Templar leaned forward, helm inches from the golden giant. Containment is weakness. The tension was volcanic. Behind Robert, the Sisters of Silence instinctively came closer, tightening their null aura around him. Their emotionless presence acted like a psychic dead zone, choking, numbing, smothering. The void hissed in irritation inside Robert's mind. "Move them away from me, Robert. I cannot breathe through their absence." Robert whispered back, terrified, "No, not you, not here." His voice trembled aloud as he tried to speak. "I don't want to hurt anyone. Please just listen." But the Templars were not listening. They never listened. The Templar leader pointed his chainsword at Robert, its teeth spinning with eager violence. "Creature, kneel." Robert's breath shook, his fists tightened. The void pushed against the inside of his skull like a tidal wave pressing against a crack in a dam. "They dare order you? They dare attempt to dominate a being of light? Break them." Robert stepped back, terrified not of the Templars, but of himself. "Please, don't make me do this." The Black Templar took a single step forward, the sister's null aura constricted, wrestling to keep Robert's emotions from spiraling. The custodians braced, torn between maintaining control of the situation and preventing a fratricidal clash with Astartes. The Templar leader raised his chainsword high, a brutal judgment about to fall. If it speaks like a man and bleeds like a man, then it dies like a man. The custodian commander intercepted, halberd sparking against the rising chainsword. "You will not touch him." The battlefield exploded into shouts, Black Templars roaring litanies, custodians giving sharp commands, sisters moving to isolate the entity. Vox channels erupting with competing authority. And in the center of it, Robert Reynolds trembled. A single tear dripped from his eye. "I don't want the void." He whispered it like a dying prayer, to hurt anyone again. But the moment of restraint shattered when one overeager Templar, young, zealous, and desperate to prove himself, broke formation. He roared a war cry and leapt forward, chainsword screaming, aimed directly at Robert's skull. The sisters reacted too slowly. The custodians moved too late. The blade would have split his face if Robert didn't flinch in terror. That flinch released a reflexive burst of golden light. Not an attack, not a beam, just a pulse of raw photonic force, a shockwave of fear-induced power. The Templar was launched backward like a toy, smashing through a stone wall and disappearing into the rubble. Silence. Every helm turned toward Robert again. The custodians froze. The sisters' null field flickered, and the Black Templars took this as a declaration of war. The Templar leader bellowed, "By Sigismund's oath, we cleanse this blight." 100 chainswords ignited, halberds lowered, null fields surged. Robert stumbled backward, whispering, "No, no, 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 please, I didn't. Please stop." The void rose inside him like a tidal wave made of shadow. "Robert, let me out." Robert screamed, and the battlefield erupted. The Black Templars surged forward like an avalanche of steel and holy wrath, chainswords roaring in 100 Vox-amplified battle cries. Their zeal was absolute, their hatred incandescent. And at the center of their charge stood a trembling man, Robert Reynolds. Hands raised, eyes wide with panic, golden light flickering across his skin like a failing star. He never wanted this. Not again. Not in this world. Not in any world. The custodians stood their ground, halberds leveled, refusing to yield their subject to the fanatic fury of the Templars. They moved with measured precision, intercepting several charging Astartes, gold and black colliding in thunderous, earth-shaking impacts. A silent sister placed herself directly between Robert and the oncoming wave, her null aura flaring like a psychic black hole. Her presence suffocated the void's rising hunger. For a moment, but only a moment. Because the sheer violence around him, the horror, the fanaticism, the screaming hatred directed at him, it cracked him open, and the void pressed outward like a prison riot inside his skull. "You are going to die here, Robert. They will carve you into pieces. Let me help you." "No, I won't. I won't let you." He backed up until his heels struck broken stone. He had nowhere left to run. A Black Templar vaulted over a custodian's guard and brought his massive power sword down toward Robert's spine. Robert flinched, throwing both hands up. A pulse of golden light erupted. Boom! It wasn't a blast. It wasn't an attack. It was a reflex, an instinctive recoil from fear. A shell of photonic force burst around him in a perfect sphere. The Templar hit the barrier and was hurled backward, armor denting from the violent impact. More Templars charged directly into the rising radiance, only to be flung away like meteors repelled by a star's magnetic field. The custodians braced themselves, boots carving trenches in the dirt, as the shock wave rolled past them. The sisters staggered, for the first time in decades, their null auras flickering like candles in a storm. Robert screamed, clutching his head. The void pressed harder, whispering like a lover and a demon combined. "This galaxy is made of nightmares, Robert. Let me burn them for you. Let me end this." Robert slammed both palms against the ground, tears streaming down his face. "No, I won't kill anyone. I won't let you out." The golden sphere around him fractured, cracked, shattered into cascading ribbons of light that sliced the air like solar flares. The custodians shielded their visors. The sisters crouched, straining to anchor their null fields. The Black Templars roared in defiance, charging again with renewed fury. One Templar made it through the storm, a veteran, massive, relentless. He swung a thunderhammer down toward Robert's skull. Robert reacted without thinking. His hand shot up, catching the hammer's head. The ground beneath them cratered instantly from the opposing forces. The Templar stared into Robert's eyes, expecting fear. What he saw instead was horror. Not at the Templar, not at the weapon, at himself. Robert whispered, "I'm sorry." And the hammer melted. Not instantly, but in a slow, horrifying dissolution as the structure of the weapon broke apart on a molecular level, turning into motes of golden dust that floated upward like dying fireflies. The Templar recoiled, shouting a curse. The custodians froze, recognizing the scale of what they'd just witnessed. The Sisters of Silence stiffened as the void surged beneath Robert's consciousness, licking the inside of his mind with cosmic hunger. Robert's light flared again, but this time it was uncontrolled. The sky above him rippled, as if reacting to a star trying to ignite at ground level. The Black Templars prepared to strike. The custodians tightened formation. The sisters braced, null fields straining to their limits. Robert screamed, and the void finally pushed a finger through the cage. A sliver. No more than that. A whisper leaking into reality. Let me show them despair. The world dimmed. Shadows bent. Warp currents twisted unnaturally. Even the Astartes faltered. Even the custodians took half a step back. And the sisters felt for the first time in their lives something trying to break into their silence. The void was not unleashed. Not yet. But it was watching through Robert's eyes. And it was smiling. The world seemed to inhale, not with wind, not with warp, but with absence. A vacuum of meaning, of safety, of sanity. Every living soul on that battlefield felt it. The custodians paused mid-advance, golden titans unnerved for the first time in centuries. The Sisters of Silence braced, null fields flaring like dying stars forced to burn hotter. The Black Templars growled litanies of hatred, tightening their grips on their weapons as the air thickened like syrup. All eyes were on Bob Reynolds, who knelt in the rubble, fingers buried in broken stone, golden light bleeding from his pores like sunlight forced through cracks in his skin. But that light was twisted, tainted, a little darker than before, a little hungrier. Inside his mind, behind 1,000 locked doors, a presence stirred. The void. It did not fully emerge. Not yet. Just a single eye opening behind the bars, letting a sliver of its awareness bleed into the world. And even that was nearly catastrophic. One of the Silent Sisters stepped closer, her pariah aura tightening around Robert like a noose of emptiness. But the moment she entered arm's reach, her null field cracked, not shattered, not broken, but strained, as if something was pressing against her void presence from the inside. Something that should not be able to. Her stance faltered. A single step backward. A silent sister, a living anti-psyker crafted to diminish gods, took a step back. Her faceless helm trembled as she gripped her blade tighter. The void whispered inside Robert, amused. Even their nothingness fears me, Robert. Robert shook violently, tears streaking down his face. Stop! Please, stop talking! He wasn't pleading with the Templars, or the custodians, or the sisters. He was pleading with the thing inside him. The Templar marshal, deciding hesitation was heresy, barked into his vox. Brothers, the creature yields to chaos! Cleanse it! Dozens of armored giants thundered forward. Robert froze. His fragile calm shattered. He whispered to himself, don't break, don't break, don't break, don't break. The void whispered back, let me protect you. The custodian commander snapped his halberd outward, refusing to allow Astartes' zealotry to trigger an extinction-level event on an Imperial world. Black Templars, stand down! They ignored him. Astartes were crafted for obedience, but Templars were crafted for faith, and faith was louder than reason. The first wave of Templars struck the custodians like a tidal wave of adamantium. Sparks, thunder, ceramite cracking against auramite. The sound shook the rubble. The custodians held the line, barely. But the second wave pushed past them and charged straight at Robert. He could feel them coming. He could hear their boots detonating against the stone. He could feel their hatred boiling off them. He pressed both palms to his skull. No, 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 no. Please don't. I can't. Please. The void's shadow stretched across his mind, a cold hand brushing his thoughts. You can, Robert. You just don't want to admit that you like what happens next. A Templar reached him. Bolter raised point blank. The trigger clicked. Robert screamed. And the world changed. Light exploded outward, but less like radiance and more like a detonation of a star's heartbeat. A blast of photonic force that folded the air into a ripple of pure annihilation. The Templar was hurled backward across an entire street, slamming into a half block with bone-shattering force. Another swung a chainsword at Robert's head. The blade liquefied, dissolved into shimmering dust before it touched him. A third leaped high, roaring a prayer to the Emperor, and became suspended midair, frozen in a column of golden light, thrashing helplessly. Robert wasn't attacking. He wasn't fighting. He was breaking, and his power spilled out like a shattered dam. His skin glowed like molten sunrise. His hair lifted in waves of golden fire. His pupils narrowed into brilliant pinpoints of starfire. And through him, through his trembling body, the battlefield felt the faintest bleed of the void's presence. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. The ground darkened beneath him. Warp currents stuttered. Daemons screamed in the Imperium, sensing a rival predator awaken. One custodian whispered beneath his breath, "By the throne, he is a conduit of light and something else." The Templar Marshal pointed at Robert and roared, "He calls the warp. He is a demon host." Robert's voice shattered as he screamed back, "I'm not. I'm trying to be good." The void purred, and that, Robert, is why you will fail. For the first time since Robert Reynolds crashed into this universe, the warp itself took notice. Not a daemon, not a warp entity, not a god. The warp, as a whole, turned an eye toward the battlefield, and it felt him, a being of light, a being of fear, a being of infinite potential force wrapped inside a trembling, fragile mind, a being with a shadow living behind his ribs. And the warp whispered back to him in a voice that was not one voice but thousands, "You do not belong here." Robert froze. The words weren't spoken aloud. They were inside him, like vibrations in the marrow of his bones. The Sisters of Silence felt it too. Their null auras shuddered as ripples of warp attention washed over the battlefield. The custodians paused mid-combat. Even their iron discipline cracked for a heartbeat. The Black Templars roared louder, mistaking the psychic quake for confirmation of their righteousness. Robert sank to his knees, clutching his chest. "No, no, please, I don't want them. I can't. Stop!" The void smiled. "Let them see you, Robert. Let them taste what you could become." A hairline fracture tore itself open above the battlefield, a thin, vertical scar of purple flame against the sky. Not a rift, not a summoning, a peak. A demonic gaze pressed through the crack like a monstrous eye looking through a keyhole. The Black Templars staggered back for the first time. One cried out, "A warp breach! A warp breach above us!" A silent sister swung her blade upward, her null aura lashing against the breach like a whip. The fracture flickered, but didn't close. Instead, it widened, a slow, deliberate widening. The warp wanted a better look at what had disturbed it. The demonic eye stared down at Robert Reynolds. It widened, not in hunger, but in recognition and fear. The custodian commander took a step forward, voice controlled despite the chaos. "This is no sorcery." He watched Robert's trembling form. "This is a reaction." Another custodian added, "The warp recoils from him." The commander finished the thought, "Or studies him." The Templar Marshal raised his sword high, screaming at the sky, "Daemon, Daemon, the creature draws them to him." He pointed his weapon at Robert. "Cleanse it before it opens a gate." Robert didn't look like a gate. He looked like a terrified man trapped inside a prison of light. The agony on his face was unmistakable. "Please, I don't want this. I don't want any of this." Golden tears fell from his eyes, steaming as they hit the ground. A custodian took a slow, cautious step toward him. "Subject, Reynolds. Control yourself." Robert sobbed. "I'm trying." The void whispered, "You could end this, Robert. One breath, one thought, and they all fall. Let me help." Robert clamped his hands over his ears, screaming, "No! I said no!" At that word no, the warp fracture above him closed. Instantly, violently, as if something on the other side was afraid of what would happen if it pushed any closer. A ripple of shock coursed through the battlefield. Even the Black Templars froze mid-charge. The custodians exchanged glances. One Sister of Silence dropped to a knee, overwhelmed by the whiplash of two opposing forces, the void shadow from inside Robert and the warp's pressure from above. For a brief, horrifying instant, the two forces touched, and the universe shuddered. Robert's eyes glowed pure white gold. His shadow darkened into a shape that wasn't human. A Templar whispered, "Throne preserve us." The void spoke openly for the first time, not in Robert's head, but in the air, audible to everyone. "This galaxy is broken." The custodians stiffened. The sisters froze. The Templars raised their weapons. The void's voice deepened, becoming an abyssal echo vibrating through broken stone. "And we will break it further." Robert screamed in defiance, "Stop! Get out of my head! You don't control me!" And the golden light inside him erupted again, not in violence, but in a desperate, terrified attempt to smother the darkness. He collapsed to the ground, panting, trembling uncontrollably. The void retreated, just barely, just enough. But every faction present now understood one thing. This man was not human. This man was not a psyker. This man was not a mutant. This man was something the galaxy had never seen before, something the warp itself hesitated to consume. A custodian whispered, "He is a threat to everything." A silent sister thought, "He is a salvation from something worse." A Black Templar roared, "He is a daemon." Robert whispered through tears, "I'm trying to be good." The battlefield had not recovered. Debris still floated in the air where Robert's panic-driven power had bent gravity. The stone beneath him still glowed faintly gold. The shadows still twisted in unnatural ways, recoiling from the imprint of the void. And every faction present, Custodians, Sisters of Silence, Black Templars, had interpreted everything differently. But one thing was clear: they could not continue this fight. Not without risking planetary annihilation. The custodian commander, stoic, unflinching, forged in loyalty, raised one gauntleted hand. The golden warriors halted instantly, forming a protective barrier around Robert Reynolds. Not aggressive, not hostile, containment. Battle-scarred rubble cracked beneath their boots as they formed a defensive phalanx. "Astartes, stand down!" The Templar marshal snarled. "You defend it! That thing is a daemon host unfettered." A custodian replied with chilling calm, "It is not of the warp." He paused, considering his own words, as if unsure how to fully explain the truth of what he'd sensed. "It is something else." The Templar struck the cracked stone with his boot in fury. "Unknown is worse than damned. Unknown cannot be trusted." The custodian commander's tone sharpened. "Unknown must be studied, not destroyed in fanatic ignorance." The Templars bristled. To call a Black Templar a fanatic was nearly a declaration of war. But before they could charge again, the silent sister who had stepped closest to Robert, her null aura strained but intact, stood between the Templars and custodians. Her gesture was simple: a single raised hand, a command without words, a command stronger than most spoken orders. The Templars paused. Only a pariah could enforce silence through gesture alone. Her second gesture was toward Robert. The custodians interpreted it instantly. "She believes he can be contained," the commander translated. "She believes he must be brought before higher authority." Another custodian growled under his breath, "He should be taken to the Sigillites' heirs." The Inquisition. He pushed himself to his feet with trembling arms, golden light flickering weakly beneath his skin. He looked like a man waking from a nightmare, but still trapped inside it. His voice cracked. I don't want to hurt anyone. I didn't mean to, any of this. I just want to make sure you're all safe. He didn't mean from himself. He meant from the void. But no one in this galaxy could understand that. The Templar Marshal pointed at him, spit forming behind his vox grill. You will speak only when commanded, warp spawn. Robert flinched hard enough to send a ripple through the air. A custodian instantly stepped between them. Marshal, one more insult, and I will silence you. For a moment, just a moment, the two greatest forces of the Imperium glared at one another through firelit haze. Gold, black, logic, zeal, duty, faith. Neither would yield, until the custodian commander spoke a phrase that carried the weight of hidden authority. Designation Sigma Null. The sisters stiffened. The Templars froze. Even Robert felt the pressure of meaning behind those words. Sigma Null. A classification used only for anomalous entities, beings not of the warp or Marvaterium, threats beyond psychers, daemons, xenos, unstable gods, and mortal frames. A classification so rare that entire sectors had never invoked it. The commander continued, he is to be taken to the nearest inquisitorial bastion, alive. The Templars erupted. Blasphemy! But the custodian stood firm. The Emperor desires understanding, not blind slaughter. Robert's breathing steadied slightly. Not much, but enough, he whispered. Thank you. The sky tore open again. Not wide, not violently, just a hairline crack, a thin seam of warped unreality. A single demonic whisper leaked out. The golden one. Robert recoiled. The custodian spun around. The sisters drew their blades. The Black Templars raised bolters, and then the crack snapped shut. No daemons appeared. No warp creatures pushed through. Just a whisper. Just a recognition. Just an omen. A custodian muttered, the warp watches him. The marshal growled, then kill him now. But the custodians tightened their formation. No. Robert raised his hands weakly. Please, don't fight again. You don't have to. But the commander interrupted. We move now. He pointed to Robert. You walk, we escort. The void whispered behind Robert's eyes. Let them escort you, Robert. Let them believe they have control. I'm curious where this goes. Robert swallowed hard. He took a step forward. Black Templars snarled. Custodians closed ranks. Sisters shadowed him with no pressure. And the Imperium began dragging a trembling god toward judgment. The march began in tense, shaking silence. Robert walked at the center, barefoot, trembling, wrapped in the cold comfort of the sisters' null aura. Each step felt like walking along the edge of a cliff, with the world watching to see if he would fall or jump. The custodians formed a golden phalanx around him, flawless in formation, weapons angled outward. Their armor hummed with restrained power, as each of them prepared to execute or defend him in the same breath. The Black Templars followed behind like a pack of wolves forced to heel, their hatred palpable, their litanies whispered, their fingers twitching on bolter triggers. The Sisters of Silence moved ghost-like at his side, their presence smothering the void, their emotionless discipline the only thing keeping Robert from unraveling completely. Ahead, carved into the horizon, stood their destination, a fortified bastion marked with the inquisitorial sigil, the unmistakable eye. The Imperial Inquisition was waiting. The custodian commander marched in silence for a long time before speaking softly to the warrior at his flank. He is neither psyker nor daemon. The second custodian replied, nor Xenos, nor human. A pause. Then what is he? The commander glanced toward Robert, toward a man who glowed like a dying star, even while terrified. A weapon, he paused, or a warning. Behind them, the Templar Marshal voxed to his squad. Brothers, steel your hearts. Should the custodians falter, we strike. Should the witches' null fields weaken, we strike. Should that creature slip free of its handlers. His gauntlet tightened around his sword. We purge it, even if the custodians defy us. A younger Templar whispered, Marshal, it erased a demon by accident. The marshal growled. Then we bring 100 more. Two silent sisters moved closer to Robert, their null fields brushing against him like icy tides. They felt something. Wrong. Not warp, not psychic, but pressure. A weight pushing against their void auras from within Robert's soul. Something testing their silence, studying it, trying to understand how to break it. One sister tapped a short sequence on her armor plate, a silent language known only to the anathema psychana, meaning it learns. Another tapped back, impossible. A third disagreed with a cold and half-measured hand sign. Nothing is impossible. Inside his mind, Robert fought to stay upright. Every emotion, fear, guilt, panic, risked triggering another surge of power. He whispered to himself, I'm okay, breathe, just breathe. But the void coiled behind his heartbeat. You're shaking, Robert. You feel their hatred like knives. You think they want to help you? Robert clenched his fists. They're trying. They're scared. I get it. They're trying. The void chuckled. A galaxy where fear replaces reason, you will fit right in. Robert shut his eyes, whispering, leave me alone. But the sisters looked at him sharply. They felt the spike of shadow beneath his skin. Their auras tightened. Harder, sharper, suppressing. Robert gasped, not in pain, but in relief. For just a second, the void was quiet again. As they approached the inquisitorial bastion, the air grew colder, not physically, but spiritually. Robert felt it first, a pressure, a presence. Not the void, not chaos, something else. His breath fogged. A custodian noticed. Subject Reynolds. What do you sense? Robert swallowed. I think someone inside knows I'm coming. The Templars laughed harshly. Of course they know. The witch tower sees all. No, Robert whispered, voice trembling. You don't understand. They see me like the warp sees me, like I'm... He shook his head. Like I'm wrong. At that exact moment, the doors of the bastion exploded open, slamming against the stone walls as a flood of cold air rushed out, and stepping through the threshold came a figure in dark robes, flanked by skull drones and servo cherubs. An inquisitor, tall, severe, eyes burning with intellect and suspicion. He raised one hand and pointed directly at Robert, and with a voice like a guillotine blade dropping, he declared, By order of the God Emperor of mankind, you are to be brought into my custody for interrogation and classification. A custodian stepped forward, voice harsh. He is under our jurisdiction. The inquisitor smiled thinly. Not anymore. He nodded toward Robert. He is a sigma null anomaly. That makes him mine. Robert took a step back. The void purred. Oh, this one is interesting. The Inquisitor stood framed by the shattered doors of the bastion, robes billowing in the cold, unnatural draft leaking from within. Servo skulls hovered like carrion birds, their red lenses fixed on the trembling figure of the golden stranger. The custodians tightened their formation. The Sisters of Silence drifted closer to him, null auras flaring in instinctive warning. The Black Templars reached for their bolters, eager for justification to unleash violence. Tension thickened like coagulating blood. The Inquisitor spoke again, calm, confident, in a voice that expected obedience from planets. Step forward, anomaly. The man did not move. He stared at the Inquisitor with haunted eyes, still shaking from his earlier loss of control. The custodian commander growled, You overstep yourself, Inquisitor. The Inquisitor smiled thinly. I rarely step anywhere except upward. He turned his stare toward the custodians. Sigma null classification grants me full authority. The Sisters of Silence exchanged brief hand signs, fast, almost imperceptible. Danger, instability, warp watches. The custodians noted it. The Inquisitor ignored it. He descended the steps slowly, deliberately, each stride measured, purposeful. You are not human, he said to the trembling figure. You are not Xenos, you are not Psyker, and you are not Damon. He stopped only a few feet away. You are something new. The figure stepped back, pulse racing. I didn't ask to come here. I don't know how. I don't want to hurt anyone. The Inquisitor's eyes gleamed. That fear, that control, that struggle, fascinating. He glanced at the sisters. Amplify your null fields. They hesitated. The custodians stiffened. The Templars whispered prayers, but the sisters obeyed. Their combined aura surged, a crushing, suffocating void of silence so heavy that the air itself seemed to stop moving. The trembling man gasped, collapsing to one knee as the void inside him recoiled violently. For a moment he felt peace. For another moment he felt suffocated. His mind flickered between relief and panic. The Inquisitor watched with rapt attention. "Good," he murmured. "The parasite trapped inside you reacts to their null presence. It hates them." A custodian snapped. "You presume too much." The Inquisitor tilted his head mockingly. "I presume exactly enough." He addressed the golden stranger again. "Tell me, does it speak to you?" The man shuddered. His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." The Inquisitor's expression darkened with satisfaction. "Then you will come with me." The custodian commander slammed his halberd's blade into the ground. "He goes nowhere without our sanction." The Inquisitor shrugged one shoulder. "Then sanction it." The tension flared, dangerously, electrically, as two pillars of imperial power stared each other down. The man tried to speak, voice cracking. "Please, stop arguing. Please don't fight because of me." The Inquisitor turned on him with terrifying precision. Silence. The word was a command, not a request, and it struck like a lash. The man flinched so hard the ground trembled beneath him. The void surged forward, sensing weakness, wanting to protect its host. A ripple of shadow crawled up his spine. A sister of silence gasped, a soft, startled sound, as her null aura buckled for a heartbeat. The Inquisitor's eyes widened in triumph. "Yes, there it is." He raised one hand. "Not in attack, in invocation." A servo skull descended carrying a data slate, glowing with red sigils and sealed decrees. The Inquisitor spoke with an edge that cut like cold iron. "By the authority vested in me by the throne, I hereby invoke inquisitorial mandate Ain't Black, effective immediately." The custodians froze. The Templars snarled. The sisters stiffened. Mandate Ain't Black was ancient, obscure, unheard of in most sectors. A law used for entities that defied categorization, phenomena beyond psychic, warp, or biological explanation, creatures capable of reshaping reality through unknown means. The Inquisitor leveled a finger directly at the trembling figure. "You belong to me now." The custodian commander growled, "You will not take him." The Inquisitor's smirk returned. "Oh, I already have." At that moment, the Bastion's tower flared to life with crimson glyphs, wards, bindings, detection fields, containment protocols. The entire fortress had activated, and above them, every servo skull, cherub, and drone turned their weapons toward the custodians. The Templars roared in outrage, the sisters wavered, and the golden stranger whispered, "Please, don't make me do this." The void whispered behind him, "They want a monster. Shall we give them one?" Crimson glyphs burned across the inquisitorial bastion, their eerie light crawling over stone and armor alike. Servo skulls rotated with cold precision. Cherubs hissed litanies through broken vox throats. Every weapon in the structure pointed toward the custodians. The air itself felt hostile. And at the center of this tightening noose stood a trembling man, a being the Imperium could not define yet wished to cage. The custodian commander growled, "Inquisitor, rescind your mandate." The Inquisitor, robes flowing, eyes bright with the thrill of discovery, merely folded his hands calmly behind his back. "No," his tone was absolute. "He is mine to study." Behind him, a new figure emerged from the shadows of the bastion, a tall, robed psyker wearing the sigils of the Librarium Occultus. His eyes glowed faintly. A sanctioned psyker, joining this moment voluntarily. Even the Templars recoiled. "Heresy!" the marshal spat. But the psyker didn't care for their outrage. He was staring at the trembling man with a mixture of awe and terror, breathing shallowly. "Inquisitor, this aura, it is not warp. and yet it presses against my mind like a sun. The Inquisitor smirked. Indeed. The custodians tightened their grip on their halberds. A sister of silence stepped closer, null aura focusing enough to make the psyker choke on his own breath. He staggered backward, gasping, "Mercy! Mercy, witch!" The Templars roared at the insult. The custodians tensed further. The sisters remained emotionless. Amid all of this, the man at the center whispered, I don't want this. Please." His breath shook, his knees buckled, his vision blurred. Inside him, behind countless mental locks, something stirred. The void. It tasted the fear, the tension, the confusion, the raw psychic attention of the psyker nearby. And it smiled. "Let me speak to them, Robert. Just a word. Just a whisper. Let me teach them fear." Robert gritted his teeth. "No." The void chuckled. "You are shaking. Your heart aches. Your ribs crack from containing me. Let me breathe, Robert. Let me stretch. Just a little." His spine arched with pain. A sister tightened her null aura. The void recoiled, but not fully. The sanctioned psyker, eager to prove his value, ignored the sister's glare and approached closer, robes fluttering in the cold. "Let me see into him," he said breathlessly. "Let me understand the anomaly." The Inquisitor nodded. "Proceed." The custodians bristled. The Templars snarled. The sisters signed frantic warnings with gloved hands. "Do not allow. Danger exceeds comprehension. Warp will answer." But neither the psyker nor the Inquisitor understood the severity. The psyker placed his hands on his temples. His voice quavered. "Entity, reveal your mind." Robert gasped. "No, don't do that." The Inquisitor snapped. "Show him your thoughts." Robert fell to both knees. "I can't. You don't understand." The psyker forced a connection. Warp light flickered across his eyes. His body stiffened. And his soul, in that instant, touched the void. He screamed. A sound so shrill and broken it shattered Vox relays. He clawed at his own face. Blood spattered the stone. His mind cracked like a pane of glass struck by a hammer. Every psychic ward in the bastion flickered. The Templars fell to one knee. The custodians' helms vibrated with static. The sisters staggered backward, null fields flaring violently like dying stars. Robert held his head, sobbing. "Please, please stop! Get out of my mind! Don't look at him! Don't look at him!" The psyker wailed, "There are two of him!" The Inquisitor stepped back in shock. "Two?" The psyker shrieked again, voice cracking. "A sun in a black hole, a being of light, and something behind it, something that smiles with teeth made of nightmares." He fell to the ground, convulsing violently as warp light bled from his eyes and mouth. And then a voice spoke aloud. Not Robert's, not human, not psychic, not warp. A voice that scraped the soul like a knife across glass. "You should not have looked inside." Everyone froze. Custodians, Templars, sisters, even the Inquisitor. The psyker went silent mid-scream. His body twisted but did not die. His shadow lengthened, shifted, rose upward, and spoke in that same impossible voice, "I see you, little galaxy." The Inquisitor took a horrified step backward. The shadow is speaking. A custodian whispered for the first time in centuries, "Throne, protect us." The shadow tilted its head. No. It pointed toward its host. "He protects you," and then, with a flicker, the shadow snapped back into Robert's body like a recoil of cosmic rubber. The psyker collapsed unconscious. Robert collapsed beside him, trembling violently, tears falling like molten gold. He whispered through shaking breaths, "This is why you can't look inside me." The custodians stood silent. The sisters bowed their heads. The Templars shook with barely contained rage and fear. And the Inquisitor realized for the first time that he was not the predator here. He was prey. The psyker lay unconscious, his mind shattered, his soul scarred with impressions no mortal was meant to endure. The stone beneath him was scorched black, not by heat but by concept, as if the ground remembered the void's presence and recoiled. A tremor ran through the assembled Imperials, custodians, Templars, sisters, the Inquisitor himself. Every one of them felt it. They had stepped too close to something that was not meant for mortal comprehension. The custodian commander approached the trembling man gently as a being forged for war could. "Subject Reynolds." Robert lifted his head weakly, glowing tears streaking down his soot-covered face. "I told you, I'm trying to be good, but he's always there, and you keep pushing him." The commander knelt down, lowering his halberd. This was a gesture few had ever witnessed. A custodian lowering himself to meet someone at eye level. "We see that now." Another custodian murmured, "The psyker touched a thing beyond chaos." The commander nodded gravely. "Beyond understanding." The Templar marshal pointed at Robert with pure venom. "Witchcraft!" The custodians rose instantly, forming a barrier between the Templars and Robert. "Marshal," the commander warned, "do not let zealotry end this world." The Templar spat inside his helm. "If that creature walks free one more moment, the Emperor himself will judge our inaction." A younger Templar whispered to his marshal, "He broke a psyker's mind without touching him." "Marshal, he is not a daemon. He is." The marshal hissed, "Silence." But the younger warrior couldn't. He stared at Robert with something neither hate nor devotion, fear. What if killing him is the heresy? The marshal's fist clenched in outrage. A silent sister stepped close enough that her null aura pressed firmly against Robert's skin. She felt something impossible. Not just the void being pushed down, but the man fighting it with every breath. She signed rapidly. "He resists the shadow. He fears it. He protects us." Another sister froze at that. Protects us. It was the opposite of everything they knew. The custodians understood. The Templars refused to. But the sisters, the ones who felt the warp only in its absence, they knew. The Inquisitor, for the first time, began to doubt his authority. He adjusted his gloves, breathing unsteadily. The shadow, the void, it spoke through the psyker's body. A custodian corrected him. "It spoke to us." The Inquisitor swallowed. "That is worse." Robert looked up, voice breaking. He didn't want to hurt him. He just defended himself. "Please, don't make him feel cornered." The Inquisitor stared at him. "You speak of it as if it were alive." Robert's eyes shifted with fear. "It is?" A cold silence followed. The Inquisitor whispered, "Can it hear us?" The void responded through Robert's voice, but deeper, layered, wrong. Always. Everyone recoiled. The Templars raised weapons. The sisters' null fields flared instinctively. The custodians leveled halberds. Robert slammed his palm against the ground, screaming, "Stop! Stop! Don't talk to them! Don't talk to them!" The void retreated instantly, not in fear, but in annoyance, like a cat pulled away from a toy. The Inquisitor raised a shaky hand. He must be moved. Now, before this escalates. A custodian countered sharply, "He cannot be taken into a psychic facility." Another added, "He cannot be placed in a null cell indefinitely." A sister signed, "He must be balanced." The custodians understood the meaning. Not too much warp, not too much null. His condition was like maintaining a star inside a glass cage. If the glass was too thick, it would shatter from pressure. If the glass was too thin, the star would burn the room. Robert whispered, "I don't want to be a prisoner." The Inquisitor replied without emotion, "You are not a prisoner." He pointed at Robert, servo skulls drifting around him like vultures. "You are a threat." Robert flinched. The Inquisitor continued, "And threats are contained until they are understood." The custodians exchanged looks. Even they knew the Inquisitor was playing a dangerous game, but before they could object, the ground beneath them shook. Screams erupted from deeper within the bastion. A Vox operator stumbled out, bleeding, shrieking, "Inquisitor! A warp entity is breaching the vaults. It's searching for him." Robert staggered backward. "No, no, 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 no." The void whispered, delighted, "They come for us, Robert. Shall we answer the door?" The warning screamed across the Vox like a dying animal. "A warp entity is breaching the vaults. It's searching for him." The courtyard erupted into chaos. Black Templars roared battle chants. Custodians snapped into defensive lines. Sisters of Silence surged to the front, null auras flaring like black suns. Servo skulls screeched error litanies as wards destabilized. The Inquisitor paled. Even his arrogance had limits. A tremor rolled beneath their feet, cracking stone tiles like brittle bone. Purple fire licked up through the fissures, warping the air with shimmering distortion. Robert staggered back, not from fear of the daemon, but from the attention he felt. A spotlight of warp awareness pinning him like a specimen. He gasped, "They're not after you. They're not after this world." His voice trembled. "They're after me." The void hummed, pleased. "Everything in this galaxy wants you, Robert. You are a toy in a universe full of monsters. Let me show them what real monsters look like." Robert clutched his head. "No, no, please, not now." The stone floor erupted upward in a geyser of warp flame. A jagged tear tore itself open, not like the small rifts from before, but a gaping wound in reality. Screeching, ululating voices spilled out like a choir drowning in its own blood. The first shape emerged, a towering demon, skin writhing with sigils, eyes burning like dying stars. Its form flickered between armor and flesh, between solidity and nightmare. It fixed all four of its eyes directly on Robert, and then it knelt. A custodian whispered, "Impossible." The Black Templar Marshal roared, "Demonic trickery!" But the daemon wasn't kneeling to them. It was kneeling to him. The creature's voice rumbled through the courtyard like thunder. "Golden One, the warp calls for you." Robert shook violently. "No, no, no, no. I don't belong here. I don't belong to you." The daemon lowered its head lower. "You are not chaos. You are not order." Its voice thickened with reverence, with fear. "But you are the void's shadow." Everyone froze. The sisters' null fields wavered. The custodians exchanged horrified looks. The Inquisitor took a step back. The Marshal spat, "Lies! We purge you!" He charged the daemon. The custodian shouted warning. Too late. The Marshal's sword came down and passed through the daemon like smoke. The daemon didn't even flinch. It continued speaking. "You are not a host. You are a prison." Robert fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face. "Please, stop. Stop talking like you know me." The daemon tilted its head. "The warp knows you, Golden One. The warp has seen your shadow." Its voice deepened. "And chaos fears it." A collective gasp rippled through the Imperials. Chaos feared nothing. Nothing. The custodian commander shook his head slowly. "This cannot be." The Inquisitor's jaw clenched. "Explain yourself, daemon." The daemon stood. Reality cracked around it. "He is not of your realm. He is not of ours." It pointed a clawed hand at Robert. "He is a star trapped within skin, and behind him lies a devourer of light." Robert screamed, "Stop! Don't talk about him." The void pulsed inside him, dark delight spreading like ink through water. The sister closest to him recoiled in horror. Her null aura flickered just enough for the void to stir. The daemon took a step forward. "We come to claim the shadow." Robert gasped. "No, no, not me. Not him. No." The daemon extended a hand. The warp around its claws began to twist, not to attack Robert, but to extract something out of him. The void whispered, "Let them try." And Robert's eyes, for a heartbeat, flashed black. A shock wave erupted outward from his body, not golden, but void dark, like the moment before a star implodes. The daemon screamed, a sound of ancient terror, and its entire form unraveled into particles of ash and shadow. The rift snapped closed. Silence, absolute silence. Robert collapsed, sobbing, clutching his chest. I didn't mean to. I didn't want that." The custodian stared, shaken. The sisters backed away, null auras flaring. The Templars reeled in disgust. The Inquisitor whispered, "He destroyed a daemon with a thought." A custodian corrected him quietly. "No, the shadow inside him destroyed it." Robert curled into himself, choking on fear. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The custodian commander approached slowly. "Subject Reynolds, we must move, now." Robert didn't rise. He whispered through trembling lips, "I can feel more coming." And then, far across the sky, the warp rippled again. This time, dozens of times. They were converging. Not on the world, not on the Imperials, on him. The sky writhed. Not once, not twice, but in dozens of places. Each ripple a silent scream in the fabric of reality. Purple fissures, warp fire scars, trembling seams of unreality threatening to burst. Every soldier on the ground felt it. Something catastrophic was coming, and every single warp distortion was converging on a single trembling figure, Robert Reynolds, who knelt in the ruined courtyard like a man awaiting execution. His shoulders shook with terror. Golden light flickered weakly under his skin, like a dying star behind cracked glass. The void whispered behind his heartbeat, "They smell us, Robert. They want me. They think they can take me away from you. Should we show them the price of reaching for what is mine?" Robert's tears glowed as they fell to the stone. "I don't want this. I don't want them." The custodian commander snapped orders. "Form wall. Intercept breach points." Dozens of golden giants locked into formation around Robert. Shields raised, halberds humming with lethal power. The Sisters of Silence closed in around him, their null auras tightening like a cocoon of stillness. Their emotionless stance masked a rising concern. The breaches were too many, too coordinated, too aware. The Templar Marshal roared, "This is the daemonhood revealed. The creature draws them." The custodian commander snarled back, "Silence, Templar. Chaos does not hunt its own." The Templar spat. "Then what do you call this?" He pointed upward, toward the sky, splitting open in a dozen places. It looked like a mural of ruptured souls, and through each crack came voices, whispers, screams, chants, golden light, shadow behind the sun, the star that fears its own darkness. The first demon emerged, then another and another. Not fully, not yet, but as shimmering forms pressing against the seams of reality. Robert felt their hunger like claws scraping inside his skull. He screamed, clutching his head. The custodians braced. The sisters pushed their null auras to the limit, suffocating the warp's pressure. The Templars bellowed war prayers. The Inquisitor stared upward in dawning horror. "They are not here for dominion," he whispered. "They are here for him." A custodian tightened his grip. He must not fall into their grasp. The sisters signaled rapidly. He must not be triggered. Null pressure stable, but weakening. Robert sobbed harder. I can't! They're calling?" "They're all calling." The void whispered playful. "Let them call, Robert. Let them come. Let them kneel like the last one did." Robert slammed his fist against the ground. "Stop talking!" Reality lurched. Every demon froze in its breach. The custodian staggered. The sisters gasped as their null auras wavered like dying stars. The void chuckled. "Good boy." 1,000 voices overlapped. "The golden one. The shadow carrier. The unbalanced sun. The Robert screamed. "Don't say his name!" A blast of golden light erupted from his body. Not violent, not destructive, but silencing. The demons recoiled. The rifts trembled. The sky darkened. The custodian commander whispered, "The light rejects chaos." The Inquisitor shook his head. "No, chaos rejects the shadow behind the light." A towering shape forced itself halfway through a breach, a massive horned entity wreathed in crimson flame. A greater demon. Its voice thundered across the courtyard. "We come not for the light." It pointed one claw at Robert, but for the darkness within him. The sisters' null auras flared violently, but the demonic gaze burned right through them. Robert trembled violently. No, don't talk about him. Don't try to take him away. Don't!" The custodian commander stepped forward, halberd raised. "Imperial formation, hold fast!" But the greater demon ignored them entirely. Its 4 burning eyes locked onto Robert. "Give us the void." Robert's heart stopped. He whispered, "I can't." The demon roared, "Then we will tear it from you." The void's voice spilled through Robert's lips. "Come and try." Every Imperial recoiled. Even the greater daemon flinched. Robert's shadow stretched, lengthened, grew tendrils like black smoke. A sister of silence gasped, her null aura buckling. The custodians braced, the Templars roared. The Inquisitor froze. The void whispered, "They want me, Robert. They cannot have me. But they can have what remains when I am done." "Shall we show them?" Robert shook his head violently. "I don't want to hurt anyone." The void fell silent, not defeated, just waiting. The breaches widened. Daemons pressed closer. Reality trembled. The Imperium's forces prepared to fight, to die, to burn the world if necessary. And Robert, barely hanging on, trembling like a dying star, whispered, "Someone, please help me." The custodian commander stepped forward. For the first time, the god-crafted warrior spoke with softness. "We are here, Robert Reynolds." Behind him, a million daemons screamed through the warp. "The void belongs to us. The golden one is ours." The sky split open. The end approached. And Robert whispered, "I think I'm going to lose control." The sky had become a cathedral of nightmares. Warp fissures stretched like bleeding wounds across the firmament. Demonic silhouettes pressed against the seams, their claws scraping reality, desperate to tear it open. The air tasted of iron, hatred, and inevitability. The Imperium stood in a fractured semicircle around a single trembling man, Robert Reynolds, hands shaking, breath ragged, eyes shining with golden terror. He felt the warp calling to him. He felt the daemons hungry for the void. He felt the custodians ready to die for him. He felt the sisters straining to smother the darkness. He felt the Black Templars roaring for blood. He felt the Inquisitor trying to calculate how to cage a star. He felt everything. Too much. Far too much. Inside his mind, the void whispered one final time, softly, intimately, like a hand brushing his cheek. "Let go, Robert. Let me take this burden. Let me swallow them, one by one, until the sky is clean and the galaxy finally understands our name." Robert's teeth chattered. "No, no, I can't. I won't let you." His scream rippled reality. The warp fissures flared. Daemons shrieked. The custodians staggered as photonic shockwaves burst outward. The sisters' null fields flared to maximum, but even they struggled to contain the rising storm inside him. He was breaking. The void felt it, and it pushed. "You cannot save them, Robert. You cannot save yourself. Only I can." The custodian commander stepped forward, raising his halberd. "Imperial shield wall, hold!" Golden warriors snapped into formation, intercepting the first demonic tendrils spilling through the cracks. Their weapons sang in perfect arcs. Warp flesh sizzled, stone cracked, the air thundered. Sisters of Silence advanced, their null auras smothering lesser demons before they could fully emerge. Black Templars charged, chainswords roaring, chanting oaths to drown out fear. The Inquisitor activated sigil wards, power crackling around him. The courtyard became a war zone. But the daemons weren't attacking the Imperium. They only wanted him. The void inside. "Give us the shadow," Robert screamed. "Stay away from him." That scream, that desperate plea, was worse than a battle cry. It was permission. The void surged to the surface like darkness breaking through ice. Robert's shadow swelled, twisted, elongated, took a shape that wasn't human or demonic or sane. The sisters recoiled, their null fields buckling under the unnatural distortion. A custodian whispered in awe, "The shadow is alive." The Inquisitor trembled. He is the cage. Robert clutched his head, golden tears burning his skin. "I won't let you hurt anyone. I won't let you win. I won't let you take me." The void laughed. "You don't get to choose, Robert. You never did." The rifts widened. Daemons clawed forward. The custodians braced for the final breach. Robert felt consciousness slipping. He felt his body failing. He felt the void taking deeper root. And then he remembered something. A single thought. A single truth. Something small, fragile, human. "I want to be good," he whispered it, and the entire battlefield froze for half a heartbeat. Not out of awe, not out of respect, out of sheer, incomprehensible confusion. A greater Daemon roared, "Fool, goodness does not exist in this galaxy." Robert shook his head, trembling. "It exists in me, and I say no more." Robert slammed both hands into the ground, not in rage, not in void fury, not in madness, but with self-control, with intention, with defiance. Golden light burst from him in a spiraling wave, not a destructive blast, but a binding, a collapse of energy pulling inward instead of exploding outward. Daemons shrieked as the light touched them, not because it burned them, but because it ignored them. The light curved around the sisters, avoided the Custodians, skipped over the Templars, bent around the Inquisitor. It touched only one thing, the rifts. Warp fissures convulsed, shuddered, compressed. Robert yelled with the effort, muscles tearing, skin cracking, golden blood leaking. "Shut them down!" And one by one, boom, 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 the rifts collapsed inward, sealed not by psychic power, nor by null fields, nor by faith, but by raw, controlled photonic force. By a man forcing a dying star into obedience. By a man who refused to break. Silence. The warp fissures were gone, the daemons banished, reality stabilized. Robert collapsed forward, catching himself with shaking arms. His entire body flickered like a sputtering flame, his breathing ragged, his mind drowning in exhaustion. But the void, for the first time since entering this galaxy, fell completely silent, not defeated, just in awe. The Custodians stared, the sisters stared, the Templars stared, the Inquisitors stared. No one spoke. Finally, Robert whispered, "I did it." The Custodian commander nodded, voice soft, "Yes, you did." Robert looked up, tears glowing gold. "I don't want to be a prisoner, but I can't be alone either." The sisters exchanged glances. The Inquisitor exhaled slowly. The Templars muttered curses. The Custodians looked at their commander, and he made a decision. "Then we will not imprison you." Robert blinked. "We will guard you." A sister stepped forward, gently bringing her null presence closer, not as a weapon, but as support. Robert's breathing steadied. For the first time since entering the 41st millennium, he felt hope. Small, shaking, fragile, but real. The Inquisitor nodded grimly. "For now." The void whispered in the deepest shadows of Robert's mind. "Let them guard you, Robert. Let them trust you. One day, we will see who truly protects whom." Robert didn't answer. He didn't need to. He had won today. A man, not a monster. The battlefield settled into an uneasy quiet, the kind that only comes after witnessing something neither mortal nor divine, but caught agonizingly between both. The ruins still glowed faintly where golden light had scorched itself into the stone. The air still trembled where warp fissures had been forced shut by sheer will. The scent of ozone, ash, and fear lingered like a ghost. And at the center of it all knelt a man who wasn't a man, wrapped in a world that wasn't ready for him. Robert Reynolds breathed slowly, painfully, like every inhale could shatter him, and every exhale could shatter the world. The Custodians stood silent, for once unsure of doctrine, unsure of command, unsure of the shape of the future. They had seen gods die. They had seen daemons rise. They had seen horrors that would break lesser minds. But they had never seen a man close a warp breach with nothing but the desire not to break. The commander spoke softly. "We will escort you to a secure location, not to imprison, to protect, and to understand." Robert nodded because right now he couldn't trust himself enough to be alone. The Sisters of Silence stepped into formation, their null fields a lifeline he never wanted to admit he needed. They didn't speak, couldn't speak, but their silent presence kept the void's whispers muted, contained, bearable. The Black Templars growled oaths under their breath, zeal tempered by a horror they refused to name. Their marshal glared not at Robert, but at the Custodians. "This is folly. No creature with two shadows should walk the Emperor's realm." But none dared strike him again. They had seen what happened when fear drove them to violence. The Inquisitor, shaken but intrigued, approached with caution. "You defy every classification we possess." Robert's eyes lowered. "I'm sorry." The Inquisitor studied him for a long, heavy moment. Do not apologize for what you are, only for what you may become. Behind that cold logic was the truth. He feared both possibilities equally. That night, as the escort prepared to move, as the Bastion reactivated its wards, as the Imperium redrew its protocols around a single living anomaly, Robert sat alone for a moment. He watched the stars, distant, cold, indifferent. The void whispered from somewhere unreachable, "You did well today, Robert. You resisted me. Astonishing." Robert clenched his fists. "I'll keep resisting you." The void chuckled, a sound like knives tapping glass. "But remember, every galaxy has its limits. Even you." Robert stood. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because for the first time in a long, agonizing eternity, he felt something inside himself. Not fear, not dread, not power. Choice. He chose to keep walking, to try again tomorrow, to trust, maybe, one day, that this broken galaxy could become something better, that he could become something better. And somewhere in the warp, something vast and ancient and cruel and curious shifted uneasily. The warp had seen the void had seen the warp, and the galaxy will never be the same. A fragile peace begins. A larger storm waits beyond the horizon, and the Sentry walks forward, a wild card in a galaxy that cannot predict which version of him will rise next. And so ends the first chronicle of Robert Reynolds, the golden man who fell screaming into a broken galaxy that has no place for mercy, no time for hope, and no understanding of the storm that sleeps inside him. Dragged from the ruins of a dying district, surrounded by zealots and demigods, tested by the Black Templars, classified by the Inquisition, and watched with cold calculation by the Custodes, he did not bend. He did not break. He chose. He chose to hold the void back when the warp itself reached for him. He chose to close the rifts rather than unleash the shadow. He chose to stand with the Imperium, not out of loyalty, not out of fear, but simply because he wants to be good. But in the 41st millennium, goodness is a flame that burns out quickly. And somewhere behind him, in the spaces where light cannot reach, something ancient and hungry watches. The void is patient, the warp is listening, chaos is calculating, and the Imperium is preparing for a future they cannot predict, because they do not have a weapon, they do not have a prisoner, they do not have a savior. They have a wild card, a star wrapped in fragile humanity, a shadow caged inside trembling light. And in a galaxy ruled by war and ruin, wild cards can change everything. This was the tale of the Sentry in the grim darkness of the far future. More stories await, more legends will fall from broken skies, and more fates will twist when the Imperium takes notice. Until then, traveler, stay vigilant, for in the 41st millennium, even the light has a shadow.